Hello guys! We all know that stories can change us in ways that none of us can think of. I mean, who does not enjoy a good story? If the story teaches you something significant, a lesson that can help change one's life and bring contentment to it. Yes, today the story that we will read is all about the most despicable act in the world, greed. It is something that ruins lives and in the case of our story today, takes away lives. I know you must be excited. Let us read the story then and find out how greed can take away someone's life. The story opens up in an apartment where a cube-shaped package lies at the gate. The female in the house picks it up and takes it inside the house. The package was lying by the front door, a cube-shaped carton sealed with tape, their name and address printed by hand. Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Lewis, 217E, 37th Street, New York, 10016. Norma picked it up, unlocked the door, and went into the apartment. It was just getting dark. After she had put the lamb chops in the broiler, she sat down to open the package. Inside the carton was a push-button unit fastened to a small wooden box. A glass dome covered the button. Norma tried to lift it off, but it was locked in place. She turned the unit over and saw a folded piece of paper scotch-taped to the bottom of the box. She pulled it off. Mr. Stewart will call on you at 8 p.m. Norma put the button unit beside her on the couch. She reread the typed note, smiling. A few moments later, she went back into the kitchen to make the salad. The doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. "I'll get it," Norma called from the kitchen. Arthur was in the living room reading. There was a small man in the hallway. He removed his hat as Norma opened the door. "Mrs. Lewis?" he inquired politely. "Yes." "I'm Mr. Stewart." "Oh, yes." Norma repressed a smile. She was sure now it was a sales pitch. "May I come in?" asked Mr. Stewart. "I'm rather busy," Norma said. "Don't you want to know what it is?" Norma turned back. Mr. Stewart's tone had been offensive. "No, I don't think so," she replied. "It could prove very valuable," he told her. "Monetarily?" she challenged. Mr. Stewart nodded. "Monetarily," he said. Norma frowned, meaning she showed displeasure. She didn't like his attitude. "What are you trying to sell?" she asked. "I'm not selling anything," he answered. Arthur came out of the living room. "Something wrong?" Mr. Stewart introduced himself. "Oh, Arthur pointed towards the living room and smiled. "What is that gadget, anyway?" "Gadget is a small fitting in machinery. It won't take long to explain," replied Mr. Stewart. "May I come in?" "If you're selling something," Arthur said. Mr. Stewart shook his head. "I'm not." Arthur looked at Norma. "Up to you," she said. He hesitated. "Well, why not?" he said. They went into the living room and Mr. Stewart sat in Norma's chair. He reached into an inside coat pocket and withdrew a small sealed envelope. Inside here is a key to the bell unit dome. He set the envelope on the chairside table. The bell is connected to our office. What's it for? Asked Arthur. If you push the button, Mr. Stewart told him, somewhere in the world, someone you don't know will die. In return for which, you will receive a payment of $50,000. Norma stared at the small man. He was smiling. What are you talking about? Arthur asked him. Mr. Stewart looked surprised. But I've just explained, he said. Is this a practical joke? Asked Arthur. Not at all. The offer is completely genuine. You aren't making sense, Arthur said. You expect us to believe? Who do you represent? Demanded Norma. Mr. Stewart looked embarrassed. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to tell you that, he said. However, I assure you, the organization is of international scope. I think you'd better leave, Arthur said, standing. Mr. Stewart rose, of course, and take your button unit with you. Are you sure you wouldn't care to think about it for a day or so? Arthur picked up the button unit and the envelope and thrust them into Mr. Stewart's hands. He walked into the hall and pulled open the door. I'll leave my card, said Mr. Stewart. He placed it on the table by the door. When he was gone, Arthur tore it in half and tossed the pieces onto the table. This story is making you all curious, isn't it? I felt the same way when I read this story for the first time many years back. That button and Mr. Stewart are pretty intriguing. Right from the start, where the characters are introduced, till the core of the action, the story indeed has grabbed our attention. Now, let us see in the second part what will happen next.